We finally have a solution to replacing all of these remotes with a single remote. Well, almost. Today we're going to be looking at the Sofabaton X1S remote. I reviewed the X1 a couple years ago. Honestly, I was not really impressed. But this guy here, they've made a lot of improvements. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything I know about this remote, but I'll also walk you through step by step on how to set it up, configure it, add devices, as well as activities. But before we dive into the video, I want to give a big thanks to our Platinum channel sponsor, Arundel Sound. Arundel Sound's 1723 series offers beautifully crafted speakers with breathtaking clarity and detail, and a host of subwoofers that provide authoritative bass. Whether you're jamming out to your favorite song or action-packed movie, the 1723 series guarantees an immersive and exhilarating experience. With a 60-day audition period, 1-year upgrade program, 10-year warranty, and a hassle-free return shipping if you're not satisfied, you absolutely have nothing to lose. Be sure to check out the links for Arundel Sound down in the description below. Inside the box, you'll find the owner's manual, the Sofabaton X1S remote, a quick start guide for basic settings, 2 USB-C charging cables, one for the remote and one for the hub, a single wired IR repeater, plus a dual wired IR repeater. Now they only include one USB-C wall charger, and of course the main hub that will be used to send IR commands to control your various components. So here we have the hub. We need to connect power, so that's one of the USB-C connections. You're going to need to get your own little power brick because it only comes with one. Plug that in. This will be the IR blaster, so this will be placed inside your cabinet so that it can communicate with your components. Like here I have my Anthem, so it'll send IR commands from this unit to here, and I believe the remote connects to the hub via Bluetooth. So if you have other items that are further in your cabinet, you can use these little IR repeaters. So you would take that. There's two inputs right here, so we can connect one. If you need to connect the other one, connect that one as well. And that's going to send those IR commands down this center and to this IR repeater. And basically the way this works is you'll remove this little tab here, and that's just a sticky, and then you can place it somewhere close to the IR sensor on the component so that it can reach. So let's say in my cabinet I have the IR repeater right here, but I also have a unit way down here. There's no way that that IR blaster can reach that far. So what we would do is we would connect that cable right there, come all the way down to the unit, and in this case I don't really have it stuck to the front, but you can see it right there. So that would send that IR command all the way down to that unit and be able to control it as well. So we're going to head into the Sofabaton app. I'm going to go ahead and log into my account since I previously reviewed a Sofabaton X1 remote. All right, so here we have the U series or the X series. Of course, this is the X series. We're going to set up a new hub. We already have the hub connected to a power outlet. I'm going to press and hold the button on the back of the hub for about 3 seconds, and the light is flashing blue. So the blue indicator is flashing. Next, and we'll go ahead and allow Bluetooth. And there's the hub, so we'll click that. We'll go ahead and allow. Connect to my internet. Not sure why it says provision, but we'll go ahead and click that. That's basically accept. And it's now connected to my network. So now we're going to select the X1S hub, and it is now connected, and we'll click save. So now we're connected to the hub, and we do have an update to the firmware, so let's go ahead and update that. All right, so that only took about a minute. And now let's connect back to the hub, click Save, and it's saying there's another update. I don't think there's an update, but I'm gonna go ahead and click Update. Let's update the firmware again. Now there is the possibility that there are two different firmware and they have to be updated in sequential order. So I'm going to give you guys the benefit of the doubt on that. And hopefully once we get through with this, we can continue on with the installation. But this definitely is taking a little bit longer than the other one. So maybe that file is a lot larger and it is indeed a different firmware version. All right, so now we have the firmware updated and we can begin adding our devices. So we're going to click the plus sign up here. We're going to be using infrared and we're going to search their database. So we're going to search for Anthem. Click that. AVM 70 is right here. Actually, there's an AVM 78K. So that's what we're going to use. And we're just going to test it. Power on, click the trigger, and it does turn it on. Perfect. So let that boot up for a second. I'm going to hit the power off trigger and it just powered it off. So good news is that it is, at least those two commands are working. So we'll assume the rest of them are and we'll test those in a little bit. We'll click next and we're going to call this Anthem AV M70. And we can choose an icon. I'm going to use this little AVR kind of icon, click complete. So it's downloading that. All right, perfect. All right, next we'll add my projector. So we'll click search, JVC, click on that, NZ8 right there. And let's just go ahead and turn it on. Boom, I heard it turn on. Looking good so far. All right, the projector just came on, so I'm gonna hit trigger off, hit it again, and she is powering down. So we are 2 for 2. And then we'll use, yeah, that looks good. So we'll use, it actually knew that the icon was a projector, so that's pretty cool. So we'll go ahead and download that code base as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is add the Apple TV, and we got to do this a little bit different. We'll click the plus at the top right. Instead of going to infrared, we're going to use Bluetooth. Then we're going to search for Apple. Click on that, and I'm going to use the Apple logo as the icon. We'll click complete. Give that a few seconds. Now using the Apple remote, we're going to go over here to settings. We're going to come down to the remotes and devices, click OK, and then we're going to scroll down here to Bluetooth. And down at the bottom, you're going to see other devices, and we're going to click on Sofabaton and click OK. So now that is connected. Now, if you have a projector, like in my case, I've got a JVC NZ8, there's one button for on, but to turn the unit off, I actually have to hit the power button twice. If I hit standby, which is the off button, if I hit it once, it pops up a menu on the screen that says, hey, are you sure you want to turn this off? So you have to hit it again. So we need to make one more change in the software, in the app, to be able to power that down when we hit the off button on the Sofabaton remote. So we're going to go back to devices. We're going to go to JVC, and up at the top, we're going to click on edit, and then we're going to come down here to power settings. And so when it's not in use, we can tell it to turn off, so that's fine. We do have separate buttons. We have an on and then we have a standby. So we're going to click next, but here's where we need to make some changes. The turn on is fine, that's just one tap. But if I click next, we have turn off sequence. So right now it's going to press the off button just once. You can see right here, it's going to press once, or it's going to press the off button immediately, but we need to add another press. So I'm going to hit the plus, and even before I hit another command, I'm going to give it just a little delay. So I'm going to say a delay of maybe 1 second, hit confirm. So it's going to hit the power off button, wait 1 second, and then we're hit the plus button again, add a command, and then we're going to come down here and hit power off again. So you can see what it's going to do. When I hit the power off button on the Sofabaton remote, it's going to turn off everything. And when it goes to turn off the JVC projector, it'll press the off button once, it'll delay 1 second, kind of pause, and then it's going to hit the off button again a second time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit complete, and we'll test that in just a little bit. So there's one other thing we need to do within the Sofabaton, and that is to tell it how the Apple TV turns on and off the unit. So if I press the Apple TV remote button, the power button, it pops up this menu up here. And so to turn the unit off, I actually have to hit the OK button to let it know I'm powering off, because as you can see, we've got some other options here: Ethernet, do not disturb, sleep timer audio, and so forth. The other option is to do a long press. So if I were to back up, and if I were to press and hold the power button, it will then power off the unit. So let's jump back over into the Sofabaton app and make a change. So we're back in the device tab. We're going to click on Apple TV 4K, and then up at the top right, click on Edit. We're going to come down to the power settings. So when the device isn't being used, let's say I switch over to the Revolution or Kaleidoscape, we do want the Apple TV to power down. So that's fine. We're going to turn that off when not in use. We'll click Next. On this page, we actually want this to have two different states. So there is only one button here for power, but one button is going to be a single press, and then the power off, we need it to be a long press. So we're actually going to set this button to this second option here. It's only a power key, but it has different actions, and I'll show you why. So if we click Next, the power on sequence is just a single tap. It's an immediate tap, so that's fine. But here's where we need to make the change. On the next page, the turn off sequence, instead of just a single press, we want to make that a long press. So we're going to click this link that says immediately, and then we can scroll down. I'm going to hold it for probably 1 second. We'll try that just to make sure, but that should be plenty. And we'll click OK. And so actually I can test it. The unit is on right now. I know you guys won't be able to see, but I'm going to hit test. And let's see what happens. And it did power off. So that is plenty of time for it to work. And now we can hit complete. Now, when I first added these three activities, it was not telling the Anthem, the AVM70, which input to select to for the appropriate activity. So I'm going to show you how to check that and change that. And when I originally set it up, I probably didn't do it right. So I'm going to back up to Devices. We're going to go to Anthem, and I'm going to click Edit at the top right. Now I'm going to go down to Source Configuration at the bottom. So whenever I am selecting an activity, this device does need to be able to change inputs. So I need to switch the inputs. I'll go to Configure. So here's where I initially messed up. I chose Bring Up the Navigation Menu because on the Anthem remote, we do not have buttons for HDMI 1, HDMI 2, HDMI 3, or sometimes they're labeled Blu-ray, game, and so forth. So I was going based on the instructions on here to use the Bring Up the Navigation Menu, and then you scroll left and right to select that. I never could really get that to work consistently, so I went back and I used the top one, which is what they recommend, direct input switching. So although my remote control does not actually have separate buttons here, this will allow us to go in and manually tell the Sofabaton which input we want to use. So we're going to select that, click Next, and so here you can see all of the different inputs. Remember earlier when I mentioned that I ended up using the Anthem AVM70 instead of the 8K? On the 8K, I did not have input 1, 2, 3, all the way to 30. I only had that top input, so it did not give me that ability. So if you run into that, if you got an Anthem, use that one. You may have to try different ones, but the original Anthem AVM 70 works here. So ideally what we need to do is I have 3 inputs, 3 devices that are plugged in. I have one for Kaleidoscape, that's HDMI 1. I have Apple TV, which is HDMI 2, and I have Arvolution, which is HDMI 3. So now we're just going to select HDMI 1, 2, and 3 because those are the only ones that I'm going to physically need. Technically, you could go ahead and add more if you wanted to. That way later on, if you add items to it, like plug in, let's say a PlayStation 5, then you could do that. So we're going to do HDMI 1. We'll find HDMI 2 there, HDMI 3 there. Actually, I'm going to add one more because I do have a PlayStation 5 that I'll be adding to this system later. So we'll do 4 for now, and I'll hit confirm. So now we basically are going to tell it, and here you can see I've already kind of cheated. I already have Kaleidoscape assigned to HDMI 1, Apple TV 4K HDMI 2, Arvolution HDMI 3, and so we'll go ahead and put the PlayStation 4, or I'm sorry, PlayStation 5 here. So we'll do PS5, and that is the input number 4, and then we'll click complete, and complete again. So we're going to add one more device because I want to show you something that's pretty interesting. If I click plus, we're going to go back to infrared, search the database, and I also have an Arvolution right here. So you can see Arvolution Player 1. Now I want to click on that. Notice right below the R, we have user shared. And so this is actually pretty cool. If they don't have a device in their database, I'm assuming that if I were to learn, let's say for instance, if I had, an Anthem AVM 70, if they didn't have it in the database, I could learn the buttons that I want. That would be uploaded to their database and then shared with the community. So that's actually pretty cool. So we're going to actually use that one. And then we're going to click trigger. I'm going to take a look over there and see if it powers on. And it powers on. So we're good to go. We'll click next. We'll choose an icon and hit complete. And that'll go ahead and update to the system. Now the last thing we need to do before we create our activities. Activities are kind of like your one push button that triggers a bunch of different things in your components. Let's say you click watch movie and it turns on my projector, it turns on my processor, it turns on the Arvolution, and so we need to configure some things. Now you'll see here Anthem, JVC, and Apple do not have the not configured, but originally when I added those items it did say not configured. I've just already done that, but I want to show you how to do that. So we'll click not configured, and then up at the top it says before you create this activity you need to look at some things. We need to know your power settings, and we need to know your source configuration. So we'll click power settings, and it says, so what state is this device when you switch to an activity that doesn't include it? So basically right now we're on Arvolution, but let's say we want to switch over to Kaleidoscape or your 4K player or your PlayStation 5. What do you want to do with the power? Do you want to turn that unit off? And so to me, if I'm switching, I don't necessarily need that. So I'm going to turn it off in use. But as you can see, we got a couple other options. We can always leave it on unless the power off button is pressed or no power switch. So we're just going to do turn off when not in use. And then right here it says, how does your original remote handle the turning on and off the device? And so if I grab the Arvolution remote, we can see we've got a power button that turns it on and off. So it's only one power and it does the same function. You hit it once to turn on, hit it once to turn it off. Some devices would have two different buttons. Like the Anthem, we've got a power on as well as a power off. And so we're just going to use a power key is the same action, hit next. And then we don't really have to add any delays or anything, so we're going to hit complete. We could test it, but like I said, I've already tested it earlier. And then up here we've got source configuration as well. So the Revolution does not need to switch any type of inputs. So we're going to say no need to switch input, and we'll click OK. So now we have all of our devices added. I'm going to do one thing before we create activities. I'm going to show you how to tidy up some things. Up at the top right, I'm going to click the Edit button and come down here to JVC and click that Edit button. And then we can come in here and type NZ8, click Done and Submit. We'll click back, and then we'll also do the same thing. Top right, Edit button, Apple Edit button, and we'll call that TV. And that way, just kind of, again, I'm just OCD on stuff like that. So now that we've got all of our devices added into the app, we're going to add our first activity. So down at the bottom, we're going to click on Activities and then the plus icon at the top right. So here you can see Sofabaton has already kind of analyzed some of the components that we have, and it's given us some options up here for default. They're suggesting watch Apple TV, maybe watch Kaleidoscape, and so forth. So if I click on watch Kaleidoscape, it selects the Anthem, which is my processor, the JVC for the projector, and the Kaleidoscape. And that's exactly what we want. If you want to select them manually, you would just come over here, click Customize. It clears all of them, and then you could select the ones that you want. So we'll go ahead and click Next. So here we need to tell it what input do we need on the AVM70. So we'll click Select an Input. So remember earlier in the video where we went in and assigned HDMI 1 or input 1 to Kaleidoscape, input 2 was Apple TV. That's what is pulling in right here. So we already have the ability to easily connect those by clicking Kaleidoscape. On the JVC, we're going to select input 1 and we'll click Next. So right now, all of my equipment is turned off. Yes, all of it's turned off, so we'll just tell it it's all off and click Next. So on this screen, it's asking what is going to control the volume. In my case, it's the AVM70. And then on this screen, once that activity has started, what do you want these other buttons that are highlighted to control? And in this case, we want that to control Kaleidoscape. So we'll use that and click Next. If you want to rename it to something different besides Watch Kaleidoscape, you can do that. And of course, we can choose an icon. We'll do the 3D glasses and click Complete. So I want you to see how quickly we can create activities. And of course, you can get a lot more custom. If you've got the ability to control your blinds or things like that, or your lights, you can go in there and say, okay, when I hit Watch Kaleidoscape, I want you to turn on the projector, turn on my AVR, set it to this input, turn on my Blu-ray player, lower my shades, and dim my lights if you have that ability. So we're going to make two more real quick. So we're going to go to, let's do Watch Apple TV and select an input, and that'll be Apple TV, input HDMI 1. So I did that really quick just to show you how fast we can create. Let's see, that's Anthem, and that is Apple TV. Grab the Apple button, complete. I mean, I just created an activity in less than 30 seconds. So that's really, really quick. And I'm really impressed with the app. They have really cleaned this up since 2 years ago when I first reviewed the original X1 remote. And so I'm grateful for that. We've got one more activity. So I'm going to do custom, and we'll do Anthem. We'll do JVC. We'll do Revolution. Next. Grab Revolution. HDMI 1. Off, off, off. Next. And that'd be Anthem, Revolution. And then this one we got to type it in. Watch Revolution. And we'll grab maybe that one right there. So now that we have our 3 activities, what this allows you to do is to make this really easy for you as well as your family. I know when my wife comes into the theater room, she's really overwhelmed when she's got to, look through this. She has no idea which one controls what input to select. So by putting everything inside the the Sofabaton, building it in the app, creating these little macros, these activities, it's going to make it really easy for you and your family to be able to enjoy your system. So we'll just go ahead and test it out. I'm going to click Watch Kaleidoscape. So Kaleidoscape came on, the Anthem just came on, and the projector is powering up right now. If I click back, and I'm going to let this boot up while I'm talking, but if we were to click Watch Apple TV, we've told it to turn off the Kaleidoscape, leave the projector on, and then switch the input on the Anthem AVM 70 over to Apple TV. And so, actually, we can go ahead and do that now because it won't interfere with the projector. So I'll hit Watch Apple TV. And on the Anthem, it just selected Apple TV, and the Apple TV just powered on. And so this thing is working extremely well. I've had an opportunity to test this. I've even deleted all these and re-added them just for the sake of making this video. So far, it's been working really, really well. Haven't had really any hiccups in the activities. The hardest part for me was assigning those HDMI inputs, and hopefully this video walks you through on how to make that really easy. It just took me a little while to figure out what was the best way for the Anthem. Now before we actually look at the remote itself, I want to take you to one other location on the app. Down here at the bottom right, we're going to click on Me. And then we're going to go to Share My Code Base. I figured this out. This is actually pretty cool. So if you were to learn or let's say you added a device and it wasn't in their database, and that's where you would take your remote and you would have to learn the different functions, learn what is the power on, what is the power off, what is the up and down and the left and the right. Once you learn that, then here you can have the option of sharing that with the community. And so if I click continue, you can see I don't have any devices because everything that I have has already been added to the database. And so I didn't need that. But that's great if you, have something like that is a brand new product, or maybe it's not a really well-known product, and so they don't have that in their database. And so that's great that the community as a whole can help contribute and provide you, the consumer, with the commands for that particular device. So I thought that was pretty slick. So while we're here, I'm going to show you something in the settings. Here's where you would update the firmware for the hub, and you can also update the firmware for your remote. If I click on firmware update for the hub, remember earlier where we had the 2 updates, that basically is what we were doing. I believe we had to update to version 1, and then we ended up updating to version 2. And up at the top it says current hub version is 2, so we know we're up to date. So if I click back, if I go to firmware update for remote, notice that our current remote version is 2, but then there's an option, it almost seems like there's an option to update to version 1. So I'm not sure why that's there. I would think that it would be like the previous page where we would see each version, version 1, version 2, and it would let us know at the top which version we're currently on. But from what I can see on here, we are on the current version. Now there are going to be certain instances where you search for a device and it's not included in their database. So I'm going to show you how you can still utilize the Sofabaton remote for your devices that aren't in there. So we're going to click the plus, choose infrared, and at first we're going to search the database for this MadVR remote. So if I type in Mad, you can see there's nothing in here that has Mad. So what we're going to do is click done, and down here it says I can't find the corresponding remote or the brand. So I'm going to click there and start learning. So this is really just, it's a video processor, so it really doesn't fit any of these categories. So we're going to choose Other. It only has 1 power, so we'll check that one and hit Next. So now we're going to pick up this remote and we're going to try to learn it using this hub. So basically what you would do is I would hit to learn, point this down, and just tap the on button 1 time. But as you can see, nothing's happening here. So for whatever reason, I found there are several remotes that it does not want to learn. I tried that with the Mad VR. Also tried it with this Hisense U7H remote. So if I click, say for instance, the learn the up, and I tap and hold or tap and let go of the up, nothing happens. But we can take this SVS remote. So this is for the Soundbase Pro. And let's say I wanted to memorize this play pause. So I'm gonna scroll down here to this play and pause, and I'll click learn. And watch, I'll just hit it one time and let go. And you can see it says success. And right here you can see it now says trigger. And so we could test it to see if that works. If we wanted to do another one, let's say the mute, we could come up here to mute, hit learn, tap and let go one time, and it learns it. So for whatever reason, not all remotes will be able to be learned inside the Sofabaton. Now, when adding a device to the Sofabaton app, you might end up finding that some of the buttons do not work properly. The good thing is we can actually easily repair those. We'll go into, let's say, the Rvolution. We'll click on Edit at the top right, and we're going to go to Add Repair Commands. So let's just say the mute button is not working on this. So over to the right of mute, we're going to see an option that says Repair. So I can click Repair, and it says, what do you want to do? So what we're going to do is we're going to learn the commands from the original remote. You click that, and then you would perform that same procedure. Take the remote, point it down towards the hub, and just press that button one time, and it will learn that function. Now, while we're talking about devices, here's a couple other really cool features that I love about this. So let's go, say for instance, to the JVC NZ8 on devices. I'm going to click Edit at the top right. And down here, you'll notice there's an option that says Assign Commands for Remote Keys. So if I click that, here's where you can actually assign any of these buttons on the Sofabaton to basically be linked to any function that you want. So let's say, for instance, some of these down here, the mute button is unassigned right now. So if I click unassigned, now I can see all of the options from the JVC NZ8 projector, and I can choose any of these to basically trigger when I click that button. And so the cool thing is you can assign the physical buttons to other features within a device. So that's super, super handy. So now I want to show you how you can create what is known as favorite keys. Now this is pretty cool. So we're going to click on Activities. Up at the top right, we'll click the Edit button. And then let's say we want to edit when we watch Kaleidoscape. So I'm going to click the Edit button next to Watch Kaleidoscape. And the second option down here says Keys Favorites. So I'm going to click that. So here we can either add a macro, which is a series of actions, or we can just add normal buttons. And so I'm going to make it simple. Let's click on Add Normal Keys. And what we're going to do is we're going to add under JVC NZ8, I'm going to choose a command, and I want to add a lens memory 1. And I'm going to hit confirm, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a little bit. I'm going to add another normal key, and we're going to go to Device, JVC NZ8, Command, and we're going to choose Lens Memory 2 and click Confirm. What Lens Memory 1 and 2, it allows me to zoom in the projector and fill my entire screen because it's a 2.35:1 aspect ratio, or I can zoom out to a 16:9 aspect ratio. And so what this is going to do is when I'm in the Watch Kaleidoscape activity, these will be two buttons within the menu that I can easily get to. But that's super cool, and again, you can create some macros. So where this could come in handy is maybe you want to create a button called intermission. And so maybe while you're watching a movie, you hit pause, and when you hit pause, then you can reach over and hit a button called intermission, and maybe that turns your lights up to a certain percentage, or maybe it raises up your shades to give more light into the room. There's definitely a lot of ways that you could use that to be really creative, but that is what that is referencing. So for now, we're just going to leave these two basic keys, these normal keys, and I'll show you in just a little bit what that looks like on the actual remote itself. So taking a look at the remote, up at the top left, we've got our master off button. We have a back button here. I'll show you what that's for, a battery indicator, and then we've got all of our activities and devices here. So up at the top, we've got our activities. We're going to control this section. Since this is not a touch screen, we're going to need to use this wheel, and then we click, and now we can see watch Kaleidoscape. That's an activity. Watch Apple TV, or watch our Valencia. Then if we click one of those, it goes through that sequence of commands to power on. Say for instance, watch Kaleidoscape, so it would turn on the Kaleidoscape, it would turn on the projector set to the correct input, and turn on our Anthem AVM 70 and set that to its correct input. To get back, we're going to click this top right button, go to devices, we can come down and click that, and here we can see each one of our devices, and we can scroll up and down and choose any of those options there. Again, to get back again, and then down here we got a few options. You can sync the device with the app. We can change some settings on how long do you want the screen to stay on. So we could set it to 10 seconds, and if we lay it down, so I can do it that way so you can see it. It went to sleep, and then when you pick it up, it senses that it has been moved. So we can change that back to 30 seconds. And then we can restart the remote if you have any issues with it, change the language, and update the firmware, or at least check with the firmware here. So we'll back up. So once you're in, let's say for instance, an activity. If I click Watch Kaleidoscape, here's where we made those changes earlier. So once it finishes, we're going to see that we have an option. If I click it once, there's those two memories that we created. So that was the additional buttons that you can add in here that can easily get to maybe the commands that you use the most. So then we can back up and back up. For the most part, that's it. So these up, down, left, and right do not correspond with this. This would be used when you're in an activity. So let's say you're watching Kaleidoscape. This would control the menu in the Kaleidoscape. These would be the buttons in the Kaleidoscape. And remember, we set the up and down and the mute to control the AVR's volume. Now, of course, you can program any of these buttons to do any commands that you want. So that is super handy and super helpful. But for the most part, that's all there is to the remote. So far, I've been really pleased with the Sofabaton X1S. If you're interested in picking one up, Sofabaton is offering a 20% discount using the code Youthman. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. And once the full review is posted, you'll be able to check it out right here. You guys, I hope you have an incredible week. God bless, and we will catch you in the next video.